I made a mistake. They're done with an iron-on number and letters. So why should mine be embroidered? Okay, so good. I'm a tote bag girl, I think. It's actually just not that serious. So
I'm Nora, and this is also known as Nora Knits.
hello there, I'm Nora, and you're watching, also known as Nora Knits. Thank you so much for joining me for another podcast episode today. I am so excited to announce that this is the final episode of the knit along that I have been hosting, which has been Stash Bust Spring. I will be announcing at the end of this video exactly how you can enter to win prizes for this knit along. There will be options for both international winners as well as within the US, but there are some specific details to each of those. So definitely make sure that if you're interested in opportunities to win, that you check out all of that information that I will make sure is written on the screen as well as posted on Instagram as well as spoken out loud. When in doubt, refer to what's written on the screen, because if I make a mistake, I will correct it there. But I am really excited to chat about a couple of my whips today. I have what is like nearly a finished object, and I think that we should just go ahead and dive on in. As per usual, I will start with the project that has been on my needles the longest, and that is the Sand Cardigan by Maria Iseva of Ula Knitwear. I have been knitting this nearly floor-length cardigan out of Nora Madara in the colorway 01 Sake. And this project has just been taking absolutely forever. And those of you who caught me when I said, oh, just a few more days left because all I have is the button band, you knew I was wrong. You knew that this would take so much longer than I expected it to, and you were right. So let's take a peek at where we are at. Last week, I had just started the double knit button band, and I also mentioned in that video that I would be putting together a tutorial, which I did. I posted it. It's linked in last week's video, but I'll make sure to just link it down below here too in case you missed it. I did post it to a separate channel. It's just called More aka Nora Knits. And I figured that would just be a really good landing page for me when I have something that's just like not the typical kind of video that I keep, what's the word? I like to keep my channel here rather cultivated, and so the odd video that does pop up that's outside of what I'm like typically doing here, I think that it's nice to have that separate page where I could just pop it. So if you're interested in following along there, go ahead. Otherwise, it's really just going to be little one-offs as needed, but I did film and post a full tutorial on how to knit a double knit button band as you go, so without having to pick up stitches first. And so far, those of you who have watched it have said it was very helpful. So I'm really glad that you found it to be so. At this point, I will say that it is way too hot to be working on this cardigan unless I am in a like overly air-conditioned space. That is not here. This is not an overly air-conditioned space. You might even be able to see already that I am sweating. So it's so not comfortable to keep this in my lap and work on it because it truly does act as a blanket. That being said, I was able to get out to a coffee shop the other day and dedicate a good couple of hours to this. And we are at the point with the double knit button band. You could see here, you're not going to be able to tell exactly where that is, but I am essentially about 3 or so inches away from the right hand shoulder seam. So I guess that kind of means it's taken about a week and a half to 2 weeks to knit the double knit button band from the bottom right corner up to the right hand shoulder. And I will still have to cut across the back of the neck and then back down the left side. I didn't mention yet, but as of today, this project has been on the needles for 124 days. And even still, after the button band, there's just a couple of things I need to finish up on this. The first one being the sleeves. I was feeling like I couldn't get an accurate representation of how long the sleeves would be until I had the button band to hold this cardigan up on my shoulders. And so I decided to just pop the sleeves onto some try-it-on tubing so that they could hang out on hold until the double knit button band is done. And then I will be able to try this on again and determine if they're at the right length to start the cuff, which I believe is just a folded cuff, similar to the hem of the sweater, which is a folded hem. So that's the one of the two things that I'll have left to finish when I'm done with the button band. The other is that this cardigan includes these sort of like inseam pockets, even though there is no side seam on this cardigan. They are worked inside of the cardigan, and that was what I had picked up, that I think it's the Jody Long yarn, last week to be able to do. So I still have to do the pockets. I still have to finish the sleeves, but I think first thing first is just to get the double knit button band done. So I've been working on that whenever it has been comfortable enough to. I think things are going to cool down a little bit after actually today here in Connecticut. It is just so toasty here. So it is really not fun having this anywhere near me, which is kind of funny too, because I know that last year I had knit up a full, I think it's the Light Lopey yarn, a full sweater in that in the middle of July or August. And I had absolutely no problem doing that. I think the issue here is that this really is just, it's so massive. It's like a blanket and it has that woolly content to it. And then just to have that heap of fabric sitting in your lap, it's too much. Whereas just a regular sweater pullover, it's a little more compact. It can kind of just stay in one spot in your lap, where this, even as it is, as I'm talking right now, it's falling all over me. It's like a blanket. So definitely something to keep in mind. And even at that rate, I knit my full length All Good dress by Magdalena Parker of Knitonomy last summer, but that was a cotton merino blend and it was all fingering weight yarn, really smooth consistency to that yarn. So there wasn't any, I never felt this. I never felt like, oh my gosh, it's just too hot to work on this project. I had that in my lap all summer. So I think it's just probably because of how bulky this yarn is. And it's not a particularly silky, soft yarn. It does have the littlest bit of like a scratch factor, not in a bad way, but it certainly does have a rougher texture to it. So something that you maybe just don't want touching your bare skin in the summer. So let's hope we just stay on track with getting that button band done in the next 2 weeks or so, and then being able to wrap up the rest of the details on this one. I don't want to let this fall to the wayside. I want this to get done. If nothing else, I want it to be waiting for me and just ready to wear come this fall. So that's the Sand Cardigan by Maria Isaeva, and I've been working on it, like I said, for 124 days. Something else I actually wanted to point out about this one, and I'm thinking of it because I'm stuffing this back inside of this tote bag that was part of the gift when I went to the Stitch and Pitch event earlier this summer. I've never been a tote bag girl, but when you have such a large project, this has been the easiest way to get this around. As it's been growing, it's just been evolving from bag to bag to bag as far as like where it actually fits. So right now, this is a perfect spot for it to be. And I'm really glad that I have such a large bag. I can pop it in. And the other thing is that I realized that when I started the button band, I was actually starting with a brand new skein of the yarn. So when I'm done, I'll be able to tell exactly how much yarn the button band took on its own. I think that's useful information. So I'm glad that that sort of just serendipitously worked out because I definitely did not plan that. But yes, when I'm done, I'll be able to tell just how much yarn the button band took, and loving having just an easy throw tote bag that I could just carry anywhere too. What a great little, I'm a tote bag girl, I think. Next up is the project that I think we've all just been highly anticipating, and certainly what I've done the most work on this past week. That is going to be my crochet project, which is my messy, dressy dress that I have been crocheting to wear to a soccer game that I have. That I'm going to in just a few days now. I did realize today that when I use an app for my sort of like countdown and count up timers to keep track of how long I've been working on projects. And I looked at it today to see how many days away we are from the game. And it said 3 days. And I was like, wait a second, how is that possible? But it's actually telling me how many full days I have until the game. So I kind of have 5 days in my head because I have today, as well as the next 3 days, and then the day of the game. So, but that was a little bit of a panic. Anyway, it actually shouldn't matter too much because I'm pretty much done with the actual crocheting and knitting on this project. It's here. It's heavy. I should weigh it. I don't have a basket here to weigh it, but I will weigh it and put it on screen when I am editing this video. It's certainly, I mean, this looks like something that it literally looks like a quilt, something that would be sitting on your bed that could cover an entire twin size bed, but it's a dress. So this is made out of some Stash Bust spring yarn. The blue squares that you see were made using 2 different cones of yarn that I had thrifted months back. They had no labels on them. My assumption is that they are a cotton, and each of them were about a fingering weight. So I held those double and then matched it up with just some very simple Lily sugar and cream cotton yarn, which is definitely a worsted weight. That's what the white is, as well as the black. Now, I finished seaming everything together. And are you excited to see what neckline I went with? Here it is. I did indeed stick with the plan that I had kind of presented. I, again, have to take this off of my lap because it's so hot in here. So I wound up going with the more sort of like high neck and racer back top for this, which meant that I added these 2 white triangles above the last kind of row of squares. So that was the neckline I wound up going for. And since we spoke, I have attached everything together. The front and the back are all connected. I went through and picked up stitches around the neckline and knit a few rows of ribbing, did 2 setup rows. Oh no, I didn't do the setup rows. I apologize. I just did the Italian sewn bind off. I thought about doing the setup rows, but just recently, I think it was on the stripe pipe sweater that I just finished, there were not setup rows on that Italian sewn bind off, and I didn't really see much of a difference. And I figured that the setup rows wouldn't really do much other than to kind of hold that ribbing in tighter. And I was just looking at this a little bit nervous about actually getting this over my head. So I decided to not do the setup rows, knit just a few rows of ribbing. I also picked up stitches around the armholes and knit a few rows of ribbing. I included as well one short row, or I guess 2 short rows, but I wound up knitting from the underarm all the way around and then adding short rows such that the width at the top was a little bit wider than the width at the underarm because I did make the underarm quite shallow. It actually fits perfectly. Because of the heat in here right now and a couple of other reasons, I'm not going to put this on today, but certainly by the next time we speak, I will have photos for you. Okay, I can't do it. I'm literally dripping in sweat. So yeah, I went for that higher neckline, the slightly more racer back, added the ribbing to the neckline as well as the armholes. I also went in and did these sort of striping down the sides of the dress. What I wound up doing after trying it on and playing around with things a little bit was I actually went down the sides of each. So I had a front and back panel, and I went down each of the sides of the front and the back and added a double crochet or a half double crochet row with the white yarn. Then went in and did a single crochet in black, a single crochet row in white, another single crochet row in black, and then I used the black yarn to join that black row from the front and the back together. So the center column in the black is definitely wider than the other two, so it doesn't exactly perfectly replicate the jersey the way that I wanted it to, but it was going to make it the easiest for me to execute. And at this rate, that was the route we were taking. So that was how I joined the front to the back. Now, in the back of the jersey that I'm replicating, there is a sort of the striping changes in the center stripe where you have the thicker blue and white stripes, and then in the center there's a skinnier blue stripe. And to make that as easy on myself as possible, I just had that blue thicker stripe running down with the granny squares the way that I had done everything else. And I actually utilized a double crochet chain or foundation, I don't know what they call that, the double crochet like foundation chain. That was how I did the center white stripe. And I basically just made that kind of as long as I thought I had to and didn't secure the tail at the bottom. Then starting with the beginning of the foundation chain, I sewed a zigzag stitch on one side of it going all the way down the dress until I reached the bottom. And it actually worked out that I had done just enough of those double crochet chains to match the length of the dress. But had I not, I would have been able to keep going with the double crochet foundation chain row thing and made it even longer, or I could have just ripped it back if it was too long. So I wound up doing that on one side with that zigzag stitch and then down the other. So this stripe runs down the full length of the back of the dress. Now, obviously, this is all cotton and it's super heavy. And that was part of why I decided to do the higher neckline with the kind of racer back. It wasn't the most popular option. I think most people were preferring the look of the square neck that I had shown last week. But I felt like personally, for the integrity of the garment, the more sort of structure I could give things on the shoulders and on the neck, and especially, the length of a strap with this weight of the garment, I didn't want it to be just sitting on, like a skinny little strap even to have that really pretty sort of square neck. But also I felt like it kept it a little bit more sporty. I think it almost looks like a basketball jersey or something, which I definitely think is like it goes with the vibe. So that was what I had done there. Then coming down the sides of the garment, I did decide to do the side splits. So to give myself a bit of relief in such a heavy cotton garment, I chose to split the front and the back from each other, which was made particularly easy because I did on the front and the back that black row to finish. So again, that single crochet in the black, the white, the black. I just had to attach the front and the back to each other with a slip stitch going up from like the knee to the underarm, and then I just left the bottom part exposed, so it just still has that black edge. Now, when I say like it is done in the sort of knitting and crocheting of it all, I think I actually have to make a little tweak. So trying this on over the weekend and just kind of trying to like wear it around the house to see how it's going to settle and fall. I have not blocked this. I don't plan to wet block it at all. I do plan to give it a steam, and I think after I've done that, it will be too long. So I added a black border on the bottom. This is the bottom hem that you're looking at. I did add that, but after then like wearing it around a little bit, the whole thing started to settle. And I am nervous that after wearing it some more and after a steam block, the edge here might actually touch the floor, which is not something that I want for a cotton handmade dress, but also not walking through a stadium. So my idea is I'm going to test it on a couple of extra squares, granny squares that I have made up. But what I'm thinking is what I'm going to do is maybe run the last square through the serger with the hopes that I could just get a clean finish edge going down this row here that will be secured. And then just like I had already done with the single crochet in the black at the bottom, I think I could do that just kind of wrapping that serged edge. That's what I'm thinking right now. The reason I can't exactly just go through and like snip this is because all of my verticals are done with a back stitch at the beginning and the end, you know, to secure that. So if I just go through and snip things, then my verticals are all going to be undone. I don't know. I think that's going to cause me some issues. So I'm hoping it will work out to simply serge off the bottom row of squares and then just pop that black border back on. But we will see. Now, looking at this, you may have noticed that it does look a little bit sloppy right now because I have yet to go through and snip all of my ends. I did choose to finish everything with like a slip knot basically. So instead of just pulling the yarn through at the end of like a crochet granny square or something like that, I took the extra precaution of inserting the tail kind of through the loop that's made and tying it off. So I'm pretty confident in how well secured the squares are and everything. But I actually picked up just today some Fabri-Tac that I'm going to go through and just add a dot to on all of my ends. Let that dry, and I will be going through and snipping all of the ends after that, just to make sure everything is really secure. Then the only thing that I have left to do is to add the details of the numbers and the patches and stuff. And in my original dream plan, I was like going to embroider all of these things on here as if that was something I had ever done before or could even grasp the like intensity of. But the reality is that I have already put quite a bit of time into this garment, and I'm feeling pretty satisfied with the amount of time that I've spent on it, such that I'm not really interested in spending much more time on it for something that I'm going to wear certainly once, maybe once more after that. At the moment, I only have intentions to wear this one time, and I'm okay with that. But I wanted to sort of reel myself in and make sure that I wasn't putting in so much time into this when it's just a silly thing for me. So because of that, I decided to scale back my dream plans. And this is actually a tactic that I kind of like to use in other aspects of life when it comes to, say, my dad is looking to do some work, to the front of the house. And I say, like, all right, so let's start out with, if we had no budget here and we just wanted to, we could put millions of dollars into the front of the house. What would we do with no budget? What's the dream? What would be ideal? And it's always, replacing windows and adding up new molding and having a beautiful new staircase put in and drawing out the, porch and, dream big. So embroidering all the numbers and letters and patches on this dress, that's like the big dream. Then in practice, it's like, okay, now what's reality? How can we scale back so that we keep the intention of the dream, but while doing it on a budget or with the time constraints or just in a more reasonable way? Maybe that's going to have a better return on the investment. Maybe just something that you'll feel was worth it in the end, and had you put more work into it, it would not have been. So if the big dream here was to have embroidered numbers and patches and names and this and that, how can we get that idea without having to put in all of those hours? The first thing that I nixed was the idea of embroidering the numbers and the name on this jersey dress. So I have a Cricut machine, so I can actually have that cut out in iron on of the number 10 and the name Messy that I can then iron onto this dress. And guess what? On the jerseys, that's exactly how it's done. They're done with an iron-on number and letters. So why should mine be embroidered? Okay, so good. That was the first big relief. Like, all right, we don't have to do that. Then I thought, well, now when it comes to the patches, I had in my sketch that I really wanted the patch of the Argentina crest with the stars representing the World Cup wins and all these particulars. I did really want the Adidas logo to make this look legit, and I'm hoping that because I have no intention of selling it, no one's gonna come after me for that. I feel like I have a little small fry problem, so that shouldn't be an issue. But then I thought, well, I'm gonna sit here and spend all this time embroidering this like crest. Meanwhile, I've never embroidered anything other than for fun, so I can't say that I'm very good at it. And then it's gonna look crummy, and I'll have put all this time into this dress to then have some like kindergarten embroidered emblem on it. So that was the next thing I thought, well, let me just see if that's something I could purchase. And turns out you could buy one of those on Etsy for like $10. So that seemed worth it because I also don't own the embroidery supply. So I would have had to buy those anyway. So that was, all right, that's a fair thing. Then the only other thing that was left was the Adidas logo. And I actually was planning on still persevering and embroidering that on because that was not something that I could find to purchase. And it seemed feasible, easy enough to embroider. And then I realized it's actually just not that serious. So I'm also going to simply Cricut and iron that on. And that makes this a way more attainable goal for me to complete in the next few days. It makes it one less thing that I need to stress about. And it's still going to have the same efficacy in the end result. And if you've been here before, you might know that one of my favorite things in crafting are the sort of minimal effort with maximum effect. I love when something doesn't take a lot of effort and a lot of money and a lot of time, but looks like it really does. So I think that that's going to work out just fine. So that is what is left here is the fabric tack, snipping the ends, hopefully hemming it a little bit, adding those details, and I have the patches I could show you. Now, I think this would be much easier to show you on my dress form like I had last week, but part of why I said I wouldn't put it on right now, on top of the fact that it is really hot, is because I would love to prevent it from overstretching before the day of. I do anticipate a bit of stretching on this, so I just don't really want to push that before I have to. So this will have to suffice for now, but I was able to pick up this little iron-on patch, which is going to be going somewhere around here. I'll have the Adidas logo over here, and then some of the jerseys, and some of them do, some of them don't, have this other patch in the middle. And I'm kind of wondering if that's too much, or does that really sell it? So can we use our imaginations, and you could tell me if I have sort of 3 gold emblems on my chest the way that the players do? Is this cool or is this too much? Perhaps you could help me with that. And otherwise, these are just the finishing touches on wrapping up my messy dressy. And really, I'm just so proud that I've been able to get the bulk of this work done. So I am so sorry that you're going to have to just wait a little bit longer to actually see it on, but I think it will be worth it. So that's where we're at with the messy dressy. Just a few more days until the game. Oh, and I know so many people were concerned about me like sitting in the heat of a stadium wearing this because, again, heavy, hot. The game starts at 9 p.m. way past my bedtime. But I'm grateful because it shouldn't be too hot at that point. So yes, I'm pretty sure I will be okay. And I'm torn right now on whether I'm going to wear a slip dress underneath it or just like black bike shorts and a tank. It'll kind of just depend on how the weather is treating me and what's going to be the most comfortable, because that's really my goal at the end of the day. But I am really, really excited, really thrilled that I've been able to get it done. I'm so excited to see it kind of in the stadium with everyone else wearing their Argentina jerseys. So that's the messy dressy, 100% in next week's video. It will be done. I will even wear it for next week's video so that we can all see the final product. Now, last project I'm going to talk about today is the one that I started a few weeks ago and then have since picked up again as the other projects I've had. It just needed something for mindless knitting. I feel like I'm over explaining that. But that is the Sailor Swift top by Veronica Lindberg of Kutova Kika. I am knitting this also for Sash Bust Spring. So I'm actually using some yarn that I had left over after knitting the Azucena pullover by Claudia Quintanilla of Unit Toronto. They did gift me the yarn for that project, and I wound up just having some left over, just enough to knit up a little tank, and so that is what I've been using it for. So yes, this yarn was gifted, but not for this project. This is the Knitting for Olive extra fine merino in the colorways brown, nougat, and cream. I also said that I would just be tacking on the one starting day of this project to the rest of the project so far. I have yet to actually write it down in my little counter, but let's just call it about 2 weeks on the needles today as far as when I kind of restarted it. Maybe a week and a half, but something like that. So here we have it. I don't think I've ever had a garment look just so absolutely teeny tiny. This is meant to have some negative ease to it if you would like. She kind of says in the pattern how to best pick your size based on the way that you want your garment to fit. And I just am kind of going based off of how much yarn I have to work with and the way that I will most likely wear this. Now, I did not gauge swatch for it, but I am knitting this in the size extra large. I'm using 3mm needles to knit it on, which is what the pattern recommends. And I have the brown nougat as my base color, with the contrast color being the cream. You do start this project kind of like a typical, nothing crazy going on. You start with that back edge and knit this flat until you reach the point of the underarm. Of course, there are increases incorporated in there. And then you cast on kind of either of the front shoulders and knit down the fronts until you are attached in front of the neck there. And again, sort of increasing as you go until you reach the underarm, at which point you connect in the round. So you might be able to tell that I've really just kind of reached that point. I'm just barely into knitting in the round. And I made a mistake. I don't know how obvious it will be. It was not obvious to me while I was knitting this that so I have an issue when I'm knitting stripes and I'm knitting them flat. It's so easy to see how many rows you've knit, right? Because you knit the right side is an odd row and then the wrong side is an even row. So if you're told to knit 6 rows, you know that you have to finish with a wrong side row, a purl row. Then as soon as you get to knitting in the round, you have to keep track of it because there is no differentiation between the right and wrong, front and back, even and odd and even. So literally the first stripe that I had done in the main color, I just didn't count it properly, and I did 1 row shy of how many I'm supposed to have between the white stripes. I think it's super, super subtle. I don't know how noticeable it is at all, but I did figure it might not be noticeable now because it's only being held up against the rows above it. But when it's kind of surrounded by all of the right size stripes, I think it's going to be way more obvious. So I've decided I will go back and I'm just going to rip out essentially about 3 rows of the main color that I've been working on now, the 2 in the contrast color, and then I will just have to add 1 more row in the brown nougat before it gets switched back to the white again. Now, I didn't do that for that specific brown nougat row, and that is how I messed up. So since then, I have gone ahead and added my little chain of stitch markers, which is a trick that I like to do. So if you're told to knit, say, 6 rows of a color, then I will chain together 5 stitch markers in a like rainbow order, and then add a progress keeper to the end of that chain so that I know working towards the progress keeper, I can knit down that rainbow towards the progress keeper. That will keep track of the 6 rows, the progress keeper being the 6th row, and then I know it's time to switch colors because that's way easier for me than trying to just count and keep track. Now, this is my second time knitting a Veronica Lindbergh pattern. The first one was also a stripe pattern. That was the Stripe Hype sweater that I just finished pretty recently. And in the pattern, she tells you how to avoid jogs in your stripes. And again, she tells you in this pattern. I kind of just ignored that in the original Stripe Hype pattern, but in this one, I figured I would give it a try. And I've only done that now, I guess, once, right? Once or twice, because I've only just connected in the round. And at the moment, it doesn't seem like that's exactly keeping them from being too jogless, but maybe it will help later on. If you have a favorite way to do jogless stripes, let us know what your favorite technique is. Maybe this one just isn't working for me. It's also only written out in the pattern, and maybe I am reading it wrong, but I don't want to give it away since it's a paid for pattern. Anyway, I have this on the small mindful cord that I have. So that's one of the swivel cords that connect on the Knitter's Pride Knit Picks needles. And I just only had this little tiny cord with the swivel, and I prefer them so much. So that's why it's all cinched in here. haven't tried this on yet. As I kind of typically do, I do like to get just a little bit more of a depth under the point where things attach in the underarm and the round before I go trying things on. I just think that that's the best way to get an accurate representation of the fit, and I'm truly not afraid to rip back if I need to. So that's what's going on right now. So far, this is comparing very much to my love for the stripe hype sweater and that pattern. I've really loved Veronica Lindbergh's pattern writing style. It's very straightforward, to the point, not much fluff, but also not bare boned. It's doing a great job of just telling you how to get through the pattern. And so I am enjoying it for the mindless knit that it is. At the moment, my thought is that when I run out of yarn next, I will probably go back and do the armholes, or I'll kind of just gauge it depending on how things are looking. My goal is to kind of knit this as long as I can with the amount of yarn that I have. And my thought being that I'll most likely be wearing this as a base layer, probably something underneath a button down or under a blazer. And so I'm pretty much always going to just be tucking this into my pants. And so I would prefer for something that just fits a little bit on the longer side. That way it sits nicely under pants. But right now it's just so tiny. It's kind of funny to me, but I'm really loving it. It feels good to be knitting on such small needles again. And it's really making me want to knit up some more summer garments. I've never done that before, so I'm having a good time with this one. And I definitely say at this point, I can recommend it as far as just how things are going right now. If you're looking for a kind of just simple summer tank pattern, it's again just that kind of hit the ground running type knitting. You're not starting with short rows and like chaos. It's just cast on and go. And I'm appreciating that right now. So loving this so far. We shall see. We shall see where things are at by the next time we chat. I should probably pop in a progress keeper after I rip those rows back. So we'll see if I remember to do that. And that is the Sailor Swift top by Veronica Lindbergh. Been on the needles for about 2 weeks. I'll firm up that number by next week. All right, so those are the whips that I have been working on. I'm so excited, and I think that it's really fun to see these stash yarns coming out of stash. I'm excited that I was able to work up a few projects during Stash Bust spring, and it's feeling a little bittersweet that it's coming to an end here. That being said, I am going to share with you the ways that you can enter to win prizes. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the prizes that we will have. However, in next week's episode, when I announce the winners, that is when I will have all the prizes here in person to be able to share with you. So let me start by saying a huge thank you to all of you who have been participating in Stash Bust Spring. My intention for this knit along, this make along, has simply been to just work through some yarn that's been sitting in your stash, to take a moment to reflect on the yarn that has been hanging out there and maybe why it's still there, and figure out ways that you could get it out, whether it be to work it up or to see what you do wind up working up and then what stays behind. So I think that's just been an interesting way to approach things. And I know I certainly have some new reflections on my own stash after having done this challenge. Now, since the beginning of the knit-along, as this is my first knit-along, I've been figuring things out as I go. And so I do appreciate your patience with me as I've been navigating this. But one of the things that has changed is essentially just the rules. And it's been to simplify things and make it a little bit more accessible for me, for you guys. So on the screen here, I will have the official rules of Stash Bust Spring when it comes to prizes. In order to participate in Stash Bust Spring, you simply need to have worked on a project utilizing your stash from March 21st until now, which is, if you're watching this on the day that this video comes out, it is Saturday, June 22nd. However, you are going to have just about a week to enter for prizes. So from June 22nd, Saturday, to Friday, June 28th, that is going to be the window to enter for prizes. You can enter in the 3 different kind of buckets that we have, but like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, there's just a couple of little details that's going to make this accessible to as many people as possible, as well as make it more simple for me to facilitate this whole thing. So the first way that you can enter for prizes for the giveaway is what you've been able to do from the beginning of the knit along until now, and that is to simply use hashtag StashBustSpring on Instagram. If you have used that hashtag in any post and tagged at akanoraknits, then you have already entered yourself in one of the ways that you could win a prize. So that's the first thing. Now, the other 2 are where things are going to get a little bit more specific, and that is to comment underneath this video or to comment underneath the Instagram post that will be going up today, Saturday, June 22nd, that says StashBustSpring giveaway. And you will be commenting utilizing hashtag StashBustSpring. Let us know what project you worked on. If you've worked on more than one project using Stash during this time period, then you can comment as many projects as you've had. So if you have worked on 3 different projects utilizing 3 different Stash yarns, then you can comment up to 3 times, which does give you more entries. So each comment is an entry, each project can be an entry. You just have to make sure to use hashtag StashBustSpring in that comment. Now, if you are inside the US, that's all you need to do. If you are outside of the US, I have to ask if you could also utilize hashtag INT for international. That's going to be the only way that I can get prizes to you guys, because I am going to have to limit the physical prizes, the prize baskets, to those within the US, but those outside of the US are absolutely still eligible for prizes, and those will be gifted digitally. So we have some digital prizes, we have some physical prizes, and I am really excited to be able to kind of just spread the wealth. So there are those 3 ways to enter for prizes. Hashtag StashBustSpring on your post on Instagram, commenting under the Instagram post using hashtag StashBustSpring and letting us know what project you worked on, commenting under this YouTube video using hashtag StashBustSpring and letting us know what project you worked on. And if you are outside of the US, you will be able to use hashtag INT in your comments on either Instagram or YouTube, in addition to hashtag StashBustSpring, so that I know that you are outside of the US and therefore you can be gifted a digital prize. I hope that that makes sense. I do have all the rules listed next to me here. They will also be in the Instagram post, and perhaps I should also add them to the description or a pinned comment on this video, so you will see that then. The only other layer is that you do need to be respectively following either the YouTube channel, so you must be subscribed to this channel, aka Nora Knits, or if you are entering through Instagram, you need to be following the Instagram account at aka Nora Knits, and that is how I will know that you are here and interested in winning prizes. Now, like I said, you will have up until noon Eastern Daylight Time on Friday, June 28th, to leave that comment, to use that hashtag. And that is at what point I will be cutting things off, because I will be drawing winners then to make sure that I can include an announcement in next week's podcast episode. So if you are entering for prizes on this YouTube video, you will hear me say your username out loud on next week's podcast episode if you have won a prize. If you're entering through Instagram, similarly, I will be announcing those winners both in the Instagram post as well as announcing it on my stories. I will not be contacting you. I will be saying your name out loud and then asking you to email me so that we can move forward with you receiving your prizes. Now, let me give you a quick rundown of the prizes that you are entering to win. And I have to say a big thank you to the people who have donated prizes for this knit along. I'm so thrilled to say that we have plenty to go around. And it's so cool to see the support that has come in for this knit along. In the realm of digital prizes, we have been gifted patterns from 2 designers. The first one is a friend of mine here on YouTube, Miss Jennifer from Pairs Well with Knitting. She recently came out with her favorite fingerless mitts knitting pattern, and she has super generously gifted us 3 copies of that knitting pattern to be gifted. So thank you, Jennifer. We also have the amazing Hannah from Herb Garden Knitwear, who has super generously gifted us 3 patterns. Those will be of your choice from her library. So if you are selected to win, you will win 1 coupon code for one of her patterns, and I will have 3 winners for that digital prize. So thank you so much to Hannah of Herb Garden Knits. As I'm announcing these, I will make sure to have the handles for these people so you could go follow them too, and just, you know, that's our way of thanking them for helping make this knit along possible. In addition to those digital prizes, we have physical prizes that have been donated from some of you guys, and I will be showing off these prize baskets that I will be putting together in combination with some of the prizes I've kind of been hoarding for the past months in anticipation for this giveaway. So in addition to what they have donated, I will have some other goodies in there for you too, but there will be prizes that were donated from our friend Kara, and Kara has a beautiful Instagram account that you can go follow too. I will make sure that her handle is on the screen here. She donated a gorgeous skein of yarn as well as a beautiful stitch marker. There will also be yarn that has been gifted to us from a friend here, Darlene. She's coming to us from British Columbia, Canada. And I am so excited to see the yarn that she has provided for a gift in this knit along. Lastly, we have beautiful Tita from Yarn for All. She has an Etsy shop where she sells yarn. You could also follow her on YouTube and Instagram. Again, I'll make sure that her handle is here, and she has very kindly offered to gift a sweater's quantity of the Fildar yarn from her shop to one lucky winner. So thank you so much to our donors. Like I said, there's going to be prize baskets I will be putting together so that there's a fairness across the physical prizes, and all of the details for the entries in this giveaway are going to be listed below, as well as over on Instagram. I feel like that was a lot of information. I just want to make sure that we make this as clear and fair as possible. And more than anything, please protect yourselves. I will not be reaching out through a comment letting you know that you've won anything. So if someone reaches out to you saying that you've won a giveaway, please ignore that, report it, block it. It's not me. You'll see your name in the video or on the Instagram post itself. Woo. That being said, I cannot believe that spring is coming to an end, although I guess it's not that shocking based on how hot it is. And I'm really excited to be thinking about my summer knits. I'm hoping to put together a sort of summer knitting plans as well as reviewing my spring knits. But it's taking me some time because of the way that I felt I put in so much thought to my spring knitting plans and they kind of foiled. So I think I'm just taking a little more precaution and trying to figure out what worked and didn't work in the last season's plans to make sure that the next season plans go even better. But it's all just part of the thing. I do really enjoy figuring out and sitting down and planning. So I guess I would also love to know what you're planning to knit this summer. Perhaps you could inspire me. I do feel like I'm going to continue incorporating stash busting into my plans and trying to keep a really healthy balance of knitting from stash and knitting from new yarn. So I think I will personally be keeping on with Stash Bust Summer in whatever capacity that's going to look like. But of course, you will know when those videos go out what exactly I've got on my mind. Other than that, as far as plans go, I just have to get that messy dressy done in the next few days. I've got to rip back on the Taylor Swift top and get that back to a nice mindless place. And I should most definitely find some more wildly air-conditioned spaces to continue working on the button band on my sand cardigan. I think we have a really exciting summer ahead. So if you enjoyed this video, if you like knitting content in general, I would definitely appreciate it if you would give this video a thumbs up. If you subscribe and ring the bell, you'll definitely be notified anytime I post a new video, especially those little ones in between, like the summer knitting plans. However, you can count on having a Saturday morning episode of the podcast every Saturday at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. I only just got used to saying that. And otherwise, you guys, big ol' thanks for watching. I will catch you on the next one. All right, bye.